The town go in search of a third successive win at Bramall Lane on Saturday afternoon when we take on Sheffield United in potentially the biggest game of our season so far. Alongside me to preview the game, I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, hat-trick in Sheffield, up for that?
Well, you know what they say, Kev, 3 is the magic. Let's not go there, shall we?
Yeah. No, let's not, but we will preview the game straight after this intro.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the longest running Luton Town podcast, which is shortlisted for the Best Football League podcast in this year's Football Content Awards. And this season we are sponsored by Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. As I said before the intro, we are previewing Sheffield United versus Luton Saturday, that rare bird of a 3 p.m. kickoff, and at Bramall Lane, not on UK television. So if you haven't got a ticket to the away end, you'll have to find other ways of keeping up with the game. Jimbo, as I mentioned prior to the intro, we've won our last 2 visits to Bramall Lane. Let's hope it continues to be a happy hunting ground for us.
Yeah, we'll take any sort of good omen or small thing like that we can at the moment. And one thing's for sure, going to go up there and be the underdog, which may help. I think you alluded to that in the Oxford podcast, and maybe that suits Luton at the moment because the pressure of being one of the pre-season favourites has not turned out so well so far. And somehow Sheffield United have turned around their form from last season, which made them the whipping boys of a supposed whipping boy league, even though in the Premier League that's still happening again, and to less fanfare than when we, Burnley and Sheffield United, were in the top flight last season, it must be said. But yeah, Championship now, and it's always felt like a Championship style fixture when we play them.
Yeah, it does do. Yep. Yeah, it's very weird how they've turned things around, haven't they? Could not keep the ball out of their net for love nor money last season. Now got the best defensive record in the Championship. Okay, it's only an 8-game burst, and looking at their fixtures, they're yet to play a Burnley or a Leeds or someone of that ilk, but we've only played one of them, so we shouldn't criticise them for that. But yeah, I didn't think we were going to be previewing Sheffield United v Luton and talking about Sheffield United having the best defensive record in the Championship when we started this season, so credit, I guess, has to go to them for turning it round.
Well, yeah, obviously at this stage, yeah, it's getting towards that 10-game mark where you sort of assess where you are. But yeah, you have to give them credit that they've changed it, but it also does show that things can change, doesn't it? Albeit they've had the summer to regroup and lick their wounds and come back stronger. But you know, they lost some players, got some others in, but it's largely the main culprits in the side, isn't it, that we were used to from the previous season. And you know, if they can do it, if they can change, then it offers hope that things can get better and improve for Luton. But it also has, the precedent's always been set there by Rob Edwards himself last season in the Premier League when he decided to change it roughly around was it this mark? Not quite this mark last season, but he did change it, and hopefully there's more of that to come.
Yeah, we'll discuss that in a moment. Third best completed long passes in the league, Sheffield United, which kind of interesting really when you consider who they've got in the centre of the park, that they want to bypass them as readily as they seemingly do. But maybe that'll play into our hands as well, because the last team who bypassed the midfield largely that we played against was Millwall, and we beat them. Obviously, our problems since then have been being passed through midfield with Plymouth and Oxford and everything else. So if they don't want to use their midfield, that'll be kind of handy, because, you know, our back three, if it is a back three, and again, we'll come on to that shortly, generally the test they like are balls into the box and physicality. What they don't like is tiki-taka around them. It doesn't seem like we're going to get that. I mean, generally, Chris Wilder sides of what we've seen of them, and we've seen an awful lot of them from his Oxford one and Northampton ones way back when, to that lot down the road in Sheffield United more recently, they don't generally play tiki-taka. They do generally get it forward to a forward pretty quick, which should bode well for us.
Yeah, you'd hope so. And hopefully in the reverse, if their midfield is at one end of the pitch or the other, that might give some space for whoever we've got in our midfield to play through. So I think it will benefit the defensive sensibilities of the players that are currently available, that we'll probably come on to in a minute when we're talking about the personnel. Hopefully that bodes well, because they'll fancy an aerial battle, I would have thought. And I think if McGuinness plays, big if on my side, but then that's what he's there to do. But yeah, you're right. It's probably, if Luton are going to continue trying to play the way they are in an attacking sense, which, let's be honest, has still been creating the chances. It's not necessarily that is the issue, even though confidence is low. And if you're talking about Elijah, he's still yet to score. But goals, they've been scored. It's at the other end. But if that carries on, then it's almost like a classic boxing clash of styles. We'll see who comes out on top.
Yeah, let's hope we can box behind our jab all afternoon rather than getting knockout punches coming our way, that's for sure. The only reason I flagged up them having the third most successful long passes in the league, that's according to FootMob stats, that is. So if that's wrong, don't blame us. Don't shoot the messenger. Is because you look at their midfielders. Actually, according to FootMob, Ollie Arblaster is the highest rated player in the Championship, which must be something, because he missed the game against Swansea with what Flash Score said was a knee injury. So if he's out, that'll be a touch. But not much of one, because we've got previous with Gustavo Hamer. Plenty of previous with Gustavo Hamer. Callum O'Hare and Vinicius Souza looked pretty tasty opposition. Certainly at Kenilworth Road. Not so much at Bramall Lane last season, but definitely at Kenilworth Road. So you'd have thought they'd use that midfield a lot more often, wouldn't you?
You would. Hamer's the one for me that causes concern. And I don't know whether that's probably because of the player final and him giving them a foothold back into the game. But he does seem to have a little knack of picking up nice little spots and spaces on the edge of the box. And if they are going to play direct and any knockdowns come, then maybe he'll be there to pick them up. And unfortunately, he could have a field day against Luton in the way that they've defended it, particularly in the last two games against Oxford and Plymouth, in the sense that there's been a couple of occasions in each game where an opposition player has been given the freedom of the penalty area to have a shot, and thankfully they've got it. They've been wayward. I wouldn't expect that Hamer would be, so that is a concern.
Yeah, he's got quality in that right boot, hasn't he? We saw it in the playoff final, unfortunately. We've seen it in the Premier League last season, and, seen it in the Championship this season. He scored the opening game of the season, didn't he, when Preston's keeper kicked it straight out to him, and he's like, oh, thank you very much, and just lifted it straight back over him into the net. Hopefully we don't do anything like that on Saturday. They went with Tyrese Campbell up front on Wednesday night. Kiefer Moore came on after the hour. I've got to think Kiefer Moore starts this game, surely. That might not be a bad thing. If McGuinness does play, and again, we'll come on to that in a second, he's more likely to like a Kiefer Moore-like figure up against him than a nippy, sort of pacey guy like Campbell or Brewster, who would be another option. So let's hope I'm not saying that Kiefer Moore is necessarily good for us, but I think McGuinness would be more comfortable up against him.
Will it be more like for like, two big giants going at it, presumably in an aerial battle, which would be more suiting Moore's abilities? And
it would also fit in with why they're so good at accurate long balls, because presumably he's going to bring an awful lot more of them down than Orian Brewster, for example.
Yeah, that's not Rhian Brewster's game, is it? But that also speaks to the knockdown situation that we can't allow Hamer to have any free space. Bannon-esque. So actually in 3 games, so you're talking the Sheffield Wednesday game, the Plymouth game and the Oxford game, there's been too much of that, too much freedom for the main midfield playmakers to do what the hell they like. And I don't think that ends well if that happens again.
No, please keep tabs on Gustavo Hamer. Please, please, please. Let's swing it back. Oh no, before we do swing it back, their goalkeeper, they took him off of Plymouth, didn't they, for a couple of million earlier in the transfer window. I've always thought when we've gone to Sheffield United in the past, their goalkeeper had a rick in them. It was Fotheringham at that point, wasn't he? He's gone to West Ham. But I always thought at some point he's going to cock up. I mean, Alfie's shot there last season went straight through his legs. He really should have kept that out, to be fair. I'm still not sure how he didn't keep the Morris one out 2 years ago as well, when apparently we didn't have a shot on goal but won 1-0. Copyright Paul Heckingbottom. This guy looks a massive upgrade on him, though.
Well, it would suggest so. They've only conceded 5 goals. And as we're recording this, we're watching Sheffield United play Swansea and look like they're going to get another clean sheet. So it's, it's quite the change around, isn't it, really, from the previous season when they shipped an unbelievable amount of goals. So that's going to be, well, the trickiest task of the season, undoubtedly, isn't it? But saying that, Luton have been able to create chances. It's if they can take them. And you get the sense that with that sort of defensive record, they're going to have to take maybe they get 1 or 2 chances, they're going to have to take one of them, maybe both of them.
Well, I mean, that was the recipe for success 2 years ago, wasn't it? You know, very much fend off all of the long balls. Of course, it was to Ollie McBurney that afternoon rather than to Kiefer Moore here. But they're similar strikers, aren't they? You know, they like the ball in the box and attacking crosses and things like that. And we didn't really... I mean, Heckingbottom was right. We didn't have an avalanche of shots on their goal that afternoon, but if you score one and they don't, you only need one chance. And, you know, if we can be that sort of clinical, that'd be nice. If we can be that clinical on Saturday, that will bode well. So let's bring it back to Luton. First of all, I mean, it has to help that we're going to a place with good memories, right? No one really wants... There's a reason why teams are bogey teams, because, you know, you keep on losing to them. So it should work in the opposite way, that a lot of this squad, not all of it, but a lot of this squad, your Alfies, your Marvellouses, your Eli's, your Morrises, Burks and et al. Have all been there and been involved in these wins. So they've all got that sort of... when you're low in confidence, you're looking for anything that will give you some sort of positivity, aren't you? So that is
anything.
That is it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's anything that that can bring you a slight glimmer of hope about it. It's I mean, on paper at the moment it looks like it's really, really tough challenge, doesn't it? But something's got to give. And we've been saying it all along, really. But I just kind of think, and I kind of hope that the last 30 minutes against Oxford showed something to build on.
In which case, do you see Saturday being the day that 5 becomes 4?
I sincerely hope so. Really, really do. Because the facts are the facts. The 2 best defensive displays have been with 10 men, but that forced the change, and it just looks so much more secure. Like the defenders knew what they were doing, what the roles were. They weren't getting through the middle in Oxford, and they certainly weren't in Portsmouth. You know, they completely nullified the threat that we highlighted before that from Pack. And it's just like the evidence is there. You just got to see it and do it. So for me, I want it. I want 4. And I mentioned earlier whether McGuinness plays, and I think that at the moment he comes out.
Let's hope that it is the day that we go to a back four. Usually what we've done in recent podcasts, in light of someone asking us to sort of pick how we think the team would be, this is our third game in 7 days. It's pretty pointless us picking an 11 that we think will happen. So rather than do that, let's just quickly discuss a couple of potential injuries that might be back, and then maybe pick out a couple of players that we'd like to see in certain positions. Otherwise, we're just replicating ourselves 3 times in quick succession. We'll get back to the formation and things for the Watford game when we might have a little bit more information. There'll have been a couple of press conferences since by that time. We might have a bit more information about where we're going formation-wise, whether it will be 4 or 5, etc., etc. Injuries. Shandon Baptiste would be fantastic to have in this game. He's got control of the ball at his feet. He's got physicality, he's got a defensive nous in the centre of the park, and he can thread a pass as well. Very much like Mr. Lokonga, who put the ball through for Alfie for the opening goal here last year. We know he's back on the grass. Rob's confirmed that in the pre-match for the Oxford game. But my kind of sense of caution that they have with injuries would tell me that they won't risk him here. They'll risk his first involvement will be Watford in 2 weeks' time.
I think so, but with Walsh being banned for 3 games, you depleted there. We've got to think about whether Krause is going to be past fit to play. I really sincerely hope so, because
it's a long afternoon if our German friend doesn't go with us.
Yes, I mean he was, until he went off on 51 minutes or whatever it was. He was the best player on the park, bar none. He was outstanding in. With the ball, without the ball, his tenacity, leading the press, starting the trigger for it, everything. He assisted the goal, scored the goal, sung the theme tune, everything. So yeah, I hope he plays. That's the main one, and then it's going to have to be Nakamba again. I think.
I mean, the positive is he's got a fortnight off.
Yeah,
after
exactly
it, I know they're going to manage his minutes, but. I mean, even if you give him all of next week off, if he's feeling knackered or whatever, he still have a week of training in the build-up to the Watford game. I would imagine the first half of next week, most of the players will have off anyway, because we've just had 3 games in really, really tough conditions and training in pitches that can't be particularly suitable to association football with all the rain that's coming down and things. It would make, and I think a lot more rain's forecast over the weekend, so it makes sense not to bother heavy training Monday and Tuesday of an international break, would it? So that's a positive. We can say to Marv, look, give us everything you can here, because we've got 2 weeks until the next game.
That would be my preferred option for sure. He's got to play himself back into.
And of course, he didn't play one of the games, did he? He didn't play at all at Plymouth.
No, they rested him. So,
and he only played 75 Tuesday night, and then he came off for Liam Walsh, which probably in hindsight wasn't necessarily the best move that we could have made. Well, it was a good move until 30 seconds later, of course. Sometimes you just got to say, I know we're protecting people, but sometimes you're in a needs-must situation, aren't you? And if you're picking a game before the start of the season where you really need as many of the 90 minutes out of Nakamba as you can get them, Sheffield United always quite high up on the list, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's why I think one of the reasons that contributed to maybe not playing against Plymouth with one eye on this one. So those 2, Krause and Nakamba, I want to see in. If Shandon Baptiste is in any way fit, then I think there's a good shout for him to come in for a similar reason, isn't it? I mean, you don't want him to break down, obviously, but with the 2 weeks break and getting him back into it, I think he's really gone under the radar so far this term. Admittedly, he's not been there for the last few games, but the things that he did do were tidy and maybe part of a not the missing link, but part of a missing link in terms of the style that he's wanting to play, because with the greatest will in the world, until Oxford, Jordan Clark had not been having a good month, but he was still playing, and so things were breaking down in the moves and the linkages between the midfield and the attack. And Liam Walsh had just got fitness really and been selected, starting to do that, and obviously now he's going to be out, so there wasn't really that consistency in the midfield, and certainly when you're talking about the physicality stakes, there was no sort of defensive athleticism that made any of the opposition think twice about just bombarding through the middle, which seemed was happening too often. So it'd be interesting to see if he's fit and available, because if he is, I think he plays some part.
Yeah, I mean, as we said at the end of that Oxford review episode, he just gives us so much flexibility in terms of midfield shape. You know, we can play two in front of one with Baptiste. We can play two behind one with Baptiste. He's comfortable playing both roles. One man we do expect to feature, based on what we've been told over the course of the week, is Carlton Morris. The general sort of declaration before the Plymouth game was he'd be a week away, and I think Rob alluded to the fact that Tuesday was close but probably not worth the risk. Well, Saturday has to be worth the risk for two reasons, really. One, Morris has a really good record at Bramall Lane, impacting the game, and two, it's a tough ask after 9 months out to ask Jacob Brown to go 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes in the space of 8 days. So you would imagine that Brown would go down to maybe 30 minutes and Morris do the first hour if all is good.
I would think so. You've got to think as well, it was so unbelievably wet and heavy against Oxford that Jacob Brown playing in that. I mean, he did really well, don't get me wrong. He did everything that we thought he would when he come back, and that we haven't seen since February. And he's going to be a tremendous asset when he gets fully up to speed and up and running, because his athleticism can't be questioned whatsoever. But he was very composed in the way that he set up Kraus, and that's a good thing, because maybe there's either a sense that chances aren't being taken or shots aren't being taken. There was certainly one of those for Elijah against Oxford, or there's too much nervousness or anxiety around the chances and they snatch at things. So that seemed like a nice little island of calm in all of that. So that's going to be a bonus. But I think that's too many games in a short space of time. When you've got the options.
Yeah, I mean, the talk may well be, does Morris come back for Elijah? It's kind of weird me saying no, because I was an advocate of leaving him out against Oxford, but that wasn't anything to do with Elijah's work rate or anything. But there's two reasons why I would play Elijah in this game. First of all, him and Morris teamed up for the winning goal here 2 years ago, so we know that their defence struggle with that particular combination, because it's largely the same defence. It's still that guy from Bosnia. I'm not even going to try and do his name. And, it's someone alongside him of a Robinson type ilk. Robinson was the one who couldn't keep the ball out of his own net last year, could he? So we know that they can't deal with them two, but also, if they're so good at accurate long balls, the last thing we need is their defence having time to pick accurate long balls. So if Elijah can go and hassle them and force them, they'll still try the long balls, but if they're rushed to do it, they might not be quite as accurate. That would therefore play into our hands from a defensive point of view, as well as what those two can offer from an attacking point of view.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The thing about Elijah, you've got to take it by game, and you were talking about it, his form up to that, and the major misses against Plymouth contributed to saying maybe comes out, but he really put in a great shift. Without the reward of a goal against Oxford, but he came very close. I'm almost inclined to say that Reece Burke slightly put him off on that cross from Doughty that almost took it off his toe, but maybe that's doing an injustice to Reece, but he was there in the right places again. But his work off the ball and his contribution, his work rate, and I don't think I've seen Elijah do so many slide tackles, much like the rain, because he was really launching into him against Oxford. So I think he's done more than enough to keep his place. And let's be honest, if he kept his place from Plymouth, and we were told well early on before the team sheets came out that he was going to start against Oxford, then he will play again.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. As I say, the more pressure we can get on their defence, the better it will be. I think the one thing that we can both agree on, we want Victor Moses as far up the pitch as possibly can. We don't want Victor Moses on the edge of our defence. We want Victor Moses on the edge of their defence, where he can do some damage. Whenever I look at these things, I always look at it from what would the other manager want. And, I mean, Chris Wilder's not necessarily the mind I would want to be in, but if I am Chris Wilder, I would much rather see Victor Moses on the edge of the Luton penalty box than on the edge of my penalty box. So the further up the field that we can get Moses for the whole game, really, I don't really want to see him at wing back whatsoever. If we play this same formation, then let's have Moses as one of the pressing midfielders, because he's quite capable of doing that, isn't he? Rather than the wing back, because confidence is key here. Rob's alluded to the fact after the Oxford game, as Jordan Clark did after the Plymouth game, that this is a team low in confidence. Look, the eye tests show you that. You can see it with your own eyes now. So the more confident players we can get, the further up the pitch, the better it will be. And there aren't many better in terms of confidence in our side right now than Victor Moses. So let's have him hurting them rather than potentially containing them.
Absolutely, yeah. Moses and Krause are the two players that seem completely untouched by any confidence issues whatsoever. And it shows in his cameos, and not necessarily the 77 minutes before Walsh got sent off, but when things changed afterwards and the shackles were taken off Victor Moses, he showed again that he was just very direct, caused a lot of problems, and that's where I want him to be. I want him to be so far up the pitch that Thomas Kaminski only sees the back of his head and it's a small dot in the vanishing distance. That's all I want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all in the away end behind the goal. If we can barely see the 7 of Victor Moses' shirt, then that will be happy days. Of course, for that to happen, we're going to have to go to a back four, or he's going to have to play one of the pressing midfield roles. So if it's the former, we're going to need a back four. You've already highlighted the fact that you'll take McGuinness out of the side, but who would be left back in that situation? Presumably Rue Waters goes to right back with Burke and Mengi at centre half. He seems reluctant to play Doughty at left back. Is there another option?
Well, probably not at the moment, but I think that a lot of the 3-man defence and then the 5 when the wing backs come back is to try and accommodate Doughty and allow him the freedom in an attacking sense to get up the pitch and do what he does. I mean, that is working. The defensive, not so much. So if it it's a tricky one to try and manoeuvre, because it will kind of temper what he can offer in open play going forward. But so many set plays in the last few games that he's still going to be in pole position to take those. So I think just in this one, it makes sense if you're going to go for a 4 that's going to happen. But the attacking impetus from going to a 4 and then presumably some form of 3 and 3 ahead of that means that the impetus is on those midfield 3 and the two attacking 3 to do what, to offer the outlet and the attacking verve that will be there, and he'll still get up the pitch as well. Maybe they can interchange as well. Maybe that's asking too much at the moment when the confidence isn't high, but there's options.
Yeah, there are options. I mean, the other option is how we finished on Tuesday night with Waters at left back, Mengi, McGuinness and Burke at right back. As we said in the Oxford game, is that an ideal situation? Probably not, but we're not in ideal territory right now. We're in needs-must territory. And if for the sake of the afternoon, that's going to be the best way of getting Alfie and Victor Moses up the pitch to do their thing, then maybe we have to do that. The one thing that formation would do would at least allow 3 pretty tall two centre halves and Reece Burke at right back, which will give them an extra height advantage for all these long balls that are coming into the box.
Yeah, and Burke is pretty good in the air, but the rest of them will be as well. So yeah, no comments about that. I was just thinking when you were talking there on the Doughty front that maybe trying to make this formation work that has been played so far to try and accommodate his abilities, maybe a rethink there and just think, let him be more attacking. And if it means that Burke and Walters have to be the fullbacks, I don't necessarily want Reece Burke to be a fullback, but he can do it.
But we just don't have Amari Bell.
Yeah,
Amari
exactly
Bell's
that.
the option
Exactly
behind Doughty, isn't he? So we need an option to go with it whilst we're waiting for Amari Bell to come back. And as you've alluded to, we're hoping it's sooner rather than later, but we have to be prepared for it to be later. That is an option, isn't it? We're not talking, would I want to see us get to the end of the season with Rue Walters left back, Reece Burke right back? No. But at some point, Amari Bell will come back, and then, of course, we can take out whoever we need to take out and get Rue on the right and Amari on the left.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, part of what allowed Luton to finish the stronger against Oxford was Rue Walters firstly dealing with Edwards, Oxford Edwards, not Rob Edwards, and nullifying that threat because he was having far too much of it. And that showed he could play on that side as well. And that gave Luton more of a platform to snuff that out. And it did really well. They didn't get any forward momentum whatsoever until very last at the end when they had that free kick that Pelly tactically gave away. And that worked really well. So, it's just having the confidence to say, well, let's forget about the 77 minutes before that, even though there were some good aspects, there were some terrible aspects as well, and just say, well, what really worked in a sense of stability and almost comfort was that final 30 minutes, and that meant Rue Walters was on the left.
And with 11 men on the pitch, we'd be able to counter-attack even better because we're not being overloaded by an extra man. Yeah, the other thing about Rue Walters at left back, while I wouldn't want it, at least whilst we come up against all these teams playing all these inverted wingers, at least the winger who's cutting onside, and presumably it's going to be that Raksaki that at Crystal Palace that we were supposedly in on loan for, but I'm not overly sure that we were. If he's cutting in on his left-hand side from the right, he's cutting in onto Rue Walters' strongest foot on the right. So therefore you'd think that's a defensive advantage in our case. And also the other thing, I think he's got a lot of pace, Raksaki. I've got to be honest, I've never seen the geezer play. If he was on loan at Charlton last season, why would I have done? But I think he's got a lot of pace. Well, so's Rue Walters. So that's not... Whereas Alfie, pace isn't his strong point, is it?
No.
So I can see... I'd have no problem with the Rue being left back on Saturday anyway. That's basically what I'm saying. If it gets Alfie and Victor down the other end of the pitch.
That's it, isn't it? That's the key thing. Listen, that Sheffield United have suddenly found some defensive rigidity from somewhere over the summer, and they are, towards the top of the division where they want to be and where obviously Luton want to be. So I think that option offers some more stability defensively for us, but there's some attacking benefits there as well. And they don't have a lot. I wouldn't imagine they have a lot of the ball. They didn't against Swansea, but then Swansea are a possession side. And they still beat Swansea by the 1-0.
Own goal though. So
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping it tight is probably the name of the game for Sheffield United. I mean, we'd love to be saying that about Luton, but that means you've got to try and find ways to break clearly the best defence currently in the Championship down. Now, chances have been chances have been there. They've been created. Maybe finishing them is the issue. Morris comes back, and I think the confidence there, he's got that, and he'll be chomping at the bit to play as well, obviously. So, yeah, there's a lot more. I just feel that that's a lot more interesting and positive, really, of a way to go about it when you go up to Bramall Lane.
Yeah, the one thing we need on Saturday is we need players in positions where they're comfortable, where they know who their opposition is, particularly Hamer. I don't care who it is who's on Hamer. Someone's got to be on him throughout the whole of the game. If it's Marv, he dealt with him largely in the playoff final, didn't he, Marv? I know he scored the equaliser, but the equaliser came from a counter-attack. You know, it wasn't like he was the instigator of it. It was Gyökeres down the side, much in the similar way of our goal in that game. They may or may not have a Gyökeres, I don't know. But by and large, he wasn't as much of a factor because we dominated the first half of the playoff final.
Mhm.
He came into it more in the second half, and then he went off. If he wants to toddle off after 65 minutes of this game, I'll literally go on and carry him off. It's not a problem. I'll save you your energy, mate. It's fine, because I really do rate him. He's a top player. It's the kind of player you'd love to see in Luton shirt, actually.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's a really good player. So yeah, back four, I really do think that will help. It's so much easier to know. I mean, people grow up. You hear about defensive partnerships, don't you? So much harder to have a partnership with 3 than it is 2. You know who your partner is. You can talk to each other. You can communicate. I mean, it must be hard for Mengi, who pretty much ends up getting dragged out to the left touch line, and Burke, who's pretty much dragged out to the right touch line. Unless they're good at sign language, it must be pretty hard for them to communicate with each other. So the only part, they can't really get a partnership going, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe communication is the issue. They just can't communicate to each other because they're so far apart.
Well, that's always the problem with the menage a trois, isn't it? Somebody always feels left out.
I've not been in that, that situation has not come readily to me. I'll take your word for it, Jimbo. I hope Mrs. Jimbo is not watching this. But yes, yeah. Kids, ask your dad. Yeah, you've thrown me completely with that one. But yeah, and obviously the atmosphere as well will add to communication issues. So the closer we can be to each other, it just makes perfect sense. We're going to be more organised and more in tune.
I just think that they seem to know their roles better. Whether it's, I think you highlighted for the Rodriguez goal against Oxford, they were marking their zones, and Rodriguez didn't give a monkey's about where their zones was. He just went in between of them. But I think when they were playing the 4, they matched up more man to man, didn't they? So it's the basics, isn't it? Do the basics right, and I think that's probably the way to go.
Yep. Even start with a 4, and then if we get in front, then bring another defender back in, and because then you can bring Victor Moses back a little bit because you won't need him as far up because we've got the goal and we've gone in front. So plenty for Rob to think about. Let's hope whatever formation and whatever strategy he comes up with, it can work to the tune that it did the last 2 games there. And, Sheffield United boys, if you want to stick 2 more in the back of your net, we'll take them. It's not a problem. We don't care. We'll readily take anything that comes. That's pretty much it for this episode of the podcast. But, of course, we won't leave without score predictions. So, Jimbo, Sheffield United versus Luton, how does it end?
If you'd have asked me at 77 minutes on Tuesday night, I'd have said Luton go up there and lose. But if they make those changes that we're talking about, which is not guaranteed because it's been a fairly set outlook so far, then I think there's more of a chance. And so, based purely on those 13 minutes at the end of the game, which offered some form of platform for Luton, I reckon they'll go up there and they'll take a point, and that'll be a good point. So I'm going to go for 1-1.
1-1 for Jimbo. That's what I was going to go for. But as I've fallen 2 points behind, I'd try and get points on the board. Can Town win this and at least get me a point that you won't get? I'm certainly not going the other way. That's for sure. I'm not at that stage yet. So it's either 2-2 or a Town win. Well, they don't concede many goals, do they? That's the problem. 2 years ago, 1-0 Luton. If we are going to make these changes, we'll think we'll be a lot more organised defensively. But it probably will come to the detriment of what happens at the other end, wouldn't it? You'll focus so much on defending, you kind of can't possibly in the short space of time work on defence and attack. So let's go with that. Let's go 1-0 Luton. And if that happens, I'll play the Saturday night's lottery as well because I might be rewarded. Let's have your score predictions in. Obviously, slightly less time than what we would usually give you because this week has been absolutely relentless. But if you do get the right result, you'll get a point, and 3 points if you nail the correct score. And during the international break, we'll get some sort of leaderboard up that we'll present in future podcasts. Thanks to everyone for watching or listening to the podcast, however it is that you've taken it in, and all of them this week. They've been coming at you thick and fast. Obviously, this championship's a relentless slog, and podcasts will keep coming. If you're worried about missing out on any of them, just click the subscribe button on wherever it is that you get this podcast, and you'll get a notification when each one drops. Thankfully, with the international break, they will come a little less frequent for a couple of weeks. And then, of course, we're back into a 3-game week straight after the international break. It's cheered you up, innit?
Yeah, I haven't slept. I haven't bloody slept.
You got 2 weeks to sleep, and then it's
eat, drink, podcast edit, do it again.
Yeah,
that's not how that goes. But you know,
well, you got
I've
2
not had
weeks.
any sleep.
You got 2 weeks to pack the bed up, and then it's got to come back down here for another 3-game week. Yeah. But we really appreciate all of your support, particularly these busy weeks. It's fantastic, and we do appreciate it. If you could just spare a few more seconds just to vote for us at the Football Content Awards. We are up in the final of the Best Football League podcast category. Voting closes on Sunday, 13th of October, so we won't be pushing this too much longer, but we really would love the chance of winning that award. Literally takes seconds to log onto their website, or indeed use the social media feeds that are available just to register your vote, and it could make a massive difference. 50% of the vote of that award is a public vote, so the more votes we can get, better our chance of winning. If you've already voted, if you've got friends or family that might like to vote on your behalf, that would be absolutely fantastic as well. That is it for this episode of the podcast. My thanks to James, as always, to the barbershop and lower level here in Luton, who stage our studio. We really appreciate your support, guys. To Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for all of our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs on set. We thank you all. And until next time, which we will hope will be the end of Sheffield United's unbeaten record as the town pick up a 3rd straight win at Bramall Lane. Till then, come on, you Hatters, we can do this.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.